everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. More progress for Oklahoma's wheat industry in the form of 5 new varieties released this week. We'll have information for you a little bit later in the show. But first, blending winter forages into bermudagrass. Here's SUNUP's Curtis Hare and our Extension Forage System Specialist, Dr. Alex Rocateli.
Well, it's almost fall here in Oklahoma, which means bermudagrass is going to start to die out. And Alex, bermudagrass is a popular forage for a lot of Oklahoma producers, but there's a way to extend grazing in those fields.
Yes, a common way to extend grazing on bermudagrass pasture that's going to start to decrease in production from now and after go dormant would be interseeding a cool season. And I would say wheat might be the most popular and a good candidate to be interseeded. So we can extend those grazing days and have forage during the fall and also during the spring.
Yeah, when we talk about wheat as a grazing option, now's typically the time where a lot of producers are going to start planting. But as we know, it's still kind of warm and bermudagrass is likely to still be growing. Does that impact that at all?
Yes, that's really impacts because it's different when you are making a seeding bed and you are placing your wheat for grazing out or dual purpose right now, and when you are interseeding that on a sod, as you can see here in bermudagrass. First, it's much harder to put the seed on the right place, and also we still have the bermudagrass growing. Soil temperatures are higher than 65 Fahrenheit, air temperature higher than 75 Fahrenheit, and it's going to stay for some days. So the bermudagrass also is going to be growing. So that's why it's very important if you are planning on interseeding during the next weeks. First, graze the bermudagrass pretty close to the ground or mow it pretty close to the ground, and then even it's a good idea to go there and apply a contact herbicide such as paraquat, because this herbicide can knock down the bermudagrass leaves, and that will give an advantage for the wheat in the next 2-3 weeks, that when they are coming up and it's very delicate. Now, I just would say that because it's a common and recurring question. Some producers ask me, Alex, can I apply glyphosate? I would say I would not apply glyphosate. Glyphosate is not a contact herbicide. Glyphosate is a systemic herbicide.
And again, the benefits of this is that you're extending the grazing period in those fields up into the next spring to when that bermudagrass comes back up, and then it's kind of almost a year-round cycle.
Exactly right. So the main advantage here is that we are filling it up the fall and the spring with high quality forage, because wheat can really provide that. Now, when we are getting like close to the mid-spring, late spring is the time that we need to think about when to really terminate that wheat so the bermudagrass cannot be affected and green up nice and dandly when we are talking about April, right? So the best way is terminate by grazing out. So you just let your cattle graze out, or if you see that it's being too much wheat, too much forage, there is a good side of that, right? Because you're having good forage production, but also can affect your bermudagrass that's coming. So perhaps mowing close to the ground, or even an application on this time of glyphosate before the bermudagrass green up comes, that would be a good practice, so you can let the bermudagrass freely grow when the green up comes.
All right, thanks, Alex. Alex Rocateli, Forage System Specialist here at Oklahoma State University. And if you'd like a link to a fact sheet about sod seeding wheat, go to our website, SUNUP.okstate.edu.
Another milestone this week for OSU's wheat improvement team. Joining us now to talk about it is Dr. Brett Carver, who leads the team. Brett, 5 new wheat varieties this year. Why 5?
Yeah, it was a tough decision just to bring it down to 5, I'll tell you that. But most importantly, we had so many different initiatives going on, and all these initiatives just came into place in one year. And all the products came at about the same time as far as when they're ready to go and be launched. And here we are. We have 5 projects to talk about. These were not just overnight decisions, of course, and hardly ever it is with plant breeding, but I counted up the number of years, and it took 67 years total for all 5 varieties to go from cross to this point where we're actually releasing them. it really comes down to what are the problems we're trying to solve, and what are the solutions we want to provide, and provide opportunities, and that's what drove this from the get-go, and it always does.
Well, let's not wait any longer. Let's give a rundown for everybody of these 5 that have been released, starting with the first one, which is called Uncharted.
Uncharted, yes. This is a dual-purpose plus wheat. I mean, it is, if you want a recipe for success, it's 1 part variety and 1 part cattle. It really wants cattle and needs cattle to do its job. And the reason for that is you can plant it early and not have to worry about one disease that has been our nemesis for all these years, and that's barley yellow dwarf. This variety has true resistance to barley yellow dwarf, a level of resistance that we've never seen before. And that's why we're calling it Uncharted. We are in very different territory. And I think it's going to lay the ground for the varieties to come after it. And we're going to see this repeated theme of a new type of barley yellow dwarf protection on our varieties. But not just that, the forage production on it, it comes out of the ground really fast, covers the ground fast. It's more of a lateral forage producer, and so that's really good for protecting that yield later on. And then it has good resistance beyond barley yellow dwarf. Again, this is just a dual-purpose, tailor-made variety.
The next one, Strad CL Plus, which we have right here.
Yeah.
Tell us about that one.
Well, I can't think of a better instrument to play a double stop on than the Strad violin. And we really can't talk about this variety unless we talk about double stop. That's what we're trying to replace, actually, and it's taken a long time to do that. We wanted to, number one, make double stop a little bit earlier maturing, and that was really important. But to make it earlier maturing, we didn't want to make it so susceptible to freezes in the spring. So we had that magic combination now. We had the little bit earlier maturity, but we can get around most of these freezes that we're seeing and have been experiencing. But you know, the same kind of protein, maybe a little bit lower protein, but it's double stop is so high to begin with. Similar level of test weight, maybe a little bit lower in test weight, but double stop can give a little bit. Higher yield, where we think this variety fits best, which is going to be right in the heart of Oklahoma, central Oklahoma, to name the first area, but then also north central and south central. There's not going to be any setback. No drop back on this. I mean, Strad's going to pick up where double stop leaves off. So this tune's going to be played for a long time.
The next one, Breakthrough, tell us about it.
Yeah, we finally have broken through this barrier of breeding wheat streak mosaic resistance into our germplasm, and it's taken a long time. The experimental number for Breakthrough ends with 8512, and I think that's significant because the last 2 digits of 8512 is 12, and that's the last 2 digits of the variety that I think Breakthrough is going to displace, and that's TAM 112. So think of Breakthrough as a replacement for TAM 112 with that wheat streak mosaic resistance that TAM 112 has, but better standability, higher yield, really good yield and test weight combination. That's been showing up in our variety trials now for a couple of years, but good quality too. So it has all those boxes checked, I think, plus has this wheat streak, which happens to come, the resistance happens to come from a related species to wheat called intermediate wheatgrass. That was also the donor of the barley yellow dwarf resistance in Uncharted.
Number 4 on the list, Butler's Gold.
Butler's Gold, yes. This is a sprinting variety. That's about the best way I can describe it. So, you know, when we want to describe a variety that comes out fast, finishes fast, that's a sprinter to the finish. And it took me an article in the Oklahoman to figure that out, thanks to Barry Trammell, because he wrote an article about OSU sprinter James Butler, and I never knew the story about him. But he's one of the fastest Oklahomans of all time, and went to school right here. He was ready to go to the Olympics in 1980, but could not because of the boycott. Anyway, I had the opportunity to visit with James, and I think this is a perfect fit because Butler's Gold is really one that's unusual. We needed something that could come in late, catch up with everything that would have started on time, and finish on time. And that takes a sprint to the finish. So this is not the usual OSU wheat variety. You want to plant it late, let it do its thing, and that is catch up with everything else. We could plant a lot of varieties in December, but they're going to try to mature on into July. Well, that's too late. we need something that has that maturity acceleration. And that takes a little bit different genetics than what we normally work with. 99% of the varieties that we breed, and this is that 1%.
Last but not least, one that is very near and dear to OSU.
Yeah, Big Country. I mean, that is all OSU name, and you know, this is a variety that looks like Big Country in the field, and it plays tall ball for one thing. It's a tall wheat, not too tall. It won't lay down. Has good standability, but it's a really tough wheat variety, and we need that because we have a lot of challenges to deal with. And I've already talked about some of the diseases. We've solved some of those problems, but this one is right there with them. The only difference is it's not a red wheat. It's not a hard red winter wheat, it's a hard white wheat that goes right in the same part of our state where we're used to growing hard red, right in the center of our state. And it has, I would say, it could be one of our best disease packages. If it's bested by one variety, it would be Uncharted, because it does not have, Big Country does not have barley yellow dwarf resistance. That's the only meaningful disease that we have to think about in Oklahoma that it does not have resistance to. And other than that, it is a beautiful wheat variety.
For seed producers who are interested in maybe getting some seed and going for it this fall, there's seed available?
Oh, definitely. Different amounts for different varieties, of course, but I think the total is over 10,000 bushels for all 5 varieties combined.
Great. Okay, Brett, congratulations
Thank
again
you.
to you and the team. We will see you
very much
again
on behalf
soon.
of the team.
And for more information on the new varieties, as well as OSU Ag Research, go to SUNUP.okstate.edu.
Well, who better to talk about the state of the economy than our extension economist, Larry Sanders. And Larry, what's going on right now?
Well, you know, we started off living in this bizarre, terrible world with the virus back in February, and things got bad for everyone, and it looked like it would hopefully not last too long, but we're several months into it now, and we're really living a tale of two worlds. Those people who were fortunate enough to keep their jobs and go back to work, and those who unfortunately are looking for work, who lost their jobs. And Oklahoma is no exception to that, except for one major thing. We were already beginning to go into a recession in some of the rural counties because of the drop in oil, and we were up in the close to double-digit unemployment range before the virus even got here.
In regards to the agricultural world, to our Oklahoma producers, what's the state of the economy meant for them?
Well, it's somewhat a mirror, of course, because consumer spending falls when we don't have people getting a paycheck, and they tend to get, for example, cheaper cuts of meat when they're out shopping because they have less spending power. More than half of the farm households get more than half of their family income from off the farm. So there's a lot of farmers out there, farm families, that lost their jobs or lost income for 4, 6, 8 months.
You know, we had the CARES Act, and now there's still more talk about a new stimulus package. Is there going to be any talk in regards to agricultural relief in that at all?
If it would have been handled before the August recess, we might have been able to see more relief come, regardless of which party was pushing or pulling. We come back now and both parties are pointing the fingers like this, and it's not optimistic right now that we're going to see something of any major impact come to the folks, not just farmers, but all of those folks that are suffering.
It's just, you know, it's just a reflection of 2020 in a whole.
Exactly.
All righty, thanks, Larry. Larry Sanders, Extension Agricultural Economist here at Oklahoma State University.
Welcome to the Mesonet Weather Report. I'm Wes Lee. It appears that cooler than normal temperatures are going to be the norm for Oklahoma for at least a little while longer. Since the first of the month, the state has spent more time below normal than above, as seen in this chart. The dark line is the statewide normal, and the blue line shows how much above or below normal we have been. The National Weather Service forecast for next week does not show much of a warming trend either. The grays indicate normal conditions, while the blues indicate expectations for below normal temperatures. This cooling trend has many producers of warm-loving plants like cotton and soybeans to be concerned about whether their crops will continue to finish development on time. Degree days are our best weather indicator of crop progress. Taking a look at cotton degree days at 3 locations shows there is not too much concern as of now. The blue bars show this year's degree days at Altus, Weatherford, and Hooker as of the 15th. The orange bars represent the 5-year average on the same date. We are currently between 98 and 103% of the 5-year normal. That doesn't mean we are out of the woods yet. A continued cool spell or an early freeze could still be devastating. Gary is up next with some information on the moisture situation.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Well, we got just enough rain this week to improve those drought conditions just a little bit on the eastern edge. Unfortunately, the biggest rains didn't fall in the worst hit areas, but we did have improvements, as I said. Let's take a look at the latest drought monitor map and see what we have. As you can see, we have a big blob of moderate to severe to extreme drought across west central and southwestern Oklahoma. Now, the drought in southwest Oklahoma has trimmed a little bit further to the west, but we still see those severe to extreme drought conditions existing across mostly Harmon County and Roger Mills and Beckham counties. And out in the Panhandle, of course, we still continue with that long-lived severe drought out in the western Panhandle and a little bit of moderate drought over in the eastern Panhandle. But other than that, most of the state is looking pretty good for drought right now. However, we are looking at some danger areas across the eastern parts of the state. Now, one of the big drivers of our weather during the cool season, let's say from November through March, is La Niña or El Nino. Now, for this coming fall and winter, we do have a La Niña present and is expected to persist through the winter into early spring. As you can see on this map of the equatorial Pacific temperatures from the sea surface temperatures, we do see those cooler than normal sea surface temperatures off the west coast of South America, which indicates La Niña is currently in place, and again, that's expected to continue through the next 5 to 6 months. Now, La Niña is significant for us at times because it can bring us, as you see from this graphic, a little bit normal, drier and warmer than normal weather across the southern tier of the United States, including Oklahoma, as that jet stream shifts farther to the north and keeps us a little bit farther away from those storm systems that come through periodically during the winter season and the cool season throughout those 5 to 6 months. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist, joins us now. Kim, let's start things off this week looking at the Black Sea wheat prices and how things look this year compared to last year.
Well, right now it's reported that Russia is selling wheat 86 cents a bushel more than they sold this time last year. They contracted a cargo for $225 a metric ton. Last year they were selling that same cargo for $194 a ton.
And then in terms of how we can localize that to Oklahoma, how does that impact prices here?
Well, if you look at Oklahoma prices, they're around $4.40 a bushel. This time last year they were at $3.70, so our prices are about 70 cents per bushel higher than this time last year, 16 cents a bushel less than Russia's.
Are you surprised by this?
I think I was surprised by the higher prices. You look at what's going on in the wheat situation. We're harvesting a record world crop, 28.3 billion bushels. The 5-year average is 27.6. Our ending stocks are projected to be 11.7 billion bushels. The 5-year average is 10.1. Our stocks to use ratio is 42.5% compared to an average of 33.3. We're harvesting a record world corn crop. We're harvesting a record soybean crop in the world. Yes, I'm surprised at the higher prices.
Now, speaking of higher prices, during the 2019-20 wheat crop year, we saw an increase in wheat price of $1.37. Could we possibly see $1.37 again this growing season?
It's possible, but I don't think it's very likely, especially between now and the first of the year. We've already got 59 cents of that price increase since our low, since harvest. We got 78 cents to go. Given the massive harvest, wheat harvest we got coming on, given the massive stocks we've got, I can't see another 78 cents. However, after the first of the year or in the fall, if we have trouble getting this crop in the United States and around the world, then it could start impacting prices and we could see higher prices. So if we lose a crop, now we got that peak price last year in March, so we could do it again if it looks like we're losing the 21 crop.
Should growers take advantage of these higher prices?
I believe I would sell some wheat on this rally.
Okay, Kim, thanks a lot. We will see you next week. And now a word from Dr. Shannon Ferrell with some mental health resources for farmers and ranchers.
Starting actually this week, we've got a series of webinars each Monday and Wednesday at 10 a.m. Central Daylight Time to talk about some of the mental health issues that impact farmers, ranchers, and the communities of which they're a part. And so we have a different expert each day talking through not only some of the issues that surround mental health, but also what you can do as a practical step forward to help either yourself or somebody that you know that might be struggling with those issues. We talk about health issues in rural communities all the time, but one of the issues we hardly ever talk about are mental health issues. And in Oklahoma, we've got some real struggles. We're third in the nation in terms of mental health issues and second in the nation in terms of serious mental health issues. So if you combine that with the fact that in rural communities, we see a statistically significant and higher incidence of suicide, and it's really all points to the fact that we need to be having some serious conversations about what those issues are and what aspects of ag and rural communities actually make those issues worth for us. And it turns out, as a matter of fact, that some of the things that are our strengths can also make us more vulnerable to those issues. We actually developed most of our project resources for this in the midst of the pandemic. And before we did this, when we submitted our project proposal, we knew that there were lots of economic stresses that were driving some of the mental health challenges that we were facing in rural communities. But with the pandemic and then also the upheaval in the ag markets, it only made those issues even more prevalent. So we really think now is a super time for us to start talking about those issues.
Several times before here on the Cow-Calf Corner, we visited about the length of what we call stage 2 of calving. In other words, how long that cow or heifer is actually in the throes of labor. And we've talked about it in terms of the impact that it has on that baby calf, that we can have that situation of a prolonged stage 2 or a prolonged delivery of the calf causing a respiratory acidosis or a kind of a compromising of the calf's health. What we haven't talked about recently is what that prolonged stage 2 of labor has, the effect it has on the cow. Some old data from clear back in 1973 showed that cows that had a prolonged stage 2 or a difficult delivery, that they had about 14% lower pregnancy rates on the next breeding season than did counterparts that had an easier delivery. Plus, those cows that had that prolonged delivery, those that did become pregnant actually calved 13 days later on the average than did the cows that had the easier birth. More recent studies, by more recent, move it up about 10, 12 years, out of Montana really looked at this more closely. And what they looked at was the percentage of cows that had a difficult birth and were allowed to go on past that 1 hour, in the case of those first calf heifers, to 2 hours before assistance was given to them. And they compared those to heifers that were given assistance in that first hour of the stage 2 of labor. What they looked at was the percentage of those heifers that were cycling at the start of the next breeding season as well as the percentage of those that became pregnant. And if you look at this chart, you can see there's a pretty substantial difference. Those that got the late assistance, after 2 hours of labor, there was a drop-off, about 70% drop-off, from 87% down to 70% of those heifers cycling at the start of the breeding season. When they did the preg check the following fall, they found the difference was 20%. 88% of the heifers that got the early assistance were pregnant, compared to only 68% of those that had the prolonged delivery. I think we want to keep this in mind as we're going through this fall calving season, or next spring if you're a spring calver, that providing assistance at the proper time is important not only for the calf's health, but for the cow's reproductive capabilities the following year. Now, I realize this represents only a small percentage of the herd, but this is again one of the ways that we end up with prolonged breeding seasons, prolonged calving seasons, and some smaller calves at sale time the following year. So I think you want to keep that in mind as you're working through this calving season and see if we can get those cows the assistance they need at the proper time. Will help the calf and certainly help that cow rebreed on time. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone. And remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at sunup.